Hello, welcome. It's time to check out my Star Wars collection.
Hello,
Okay.
YouTube. Welcome to another edition of Star Wars Collections and Displays. I'm Jack. I've got Jim here with me as always, and today we're talking to a very important individual. Your name is Lee. Lee, if you will, take a moment, introduce yourself, talk to us a little bit about your Star Wars collection.
My name's Lee. I'm from Leicester, UK. I'm quite a newbie at Star Wars collecting, weirdly enough. But then my brother, who's been collecting for many years, said, "But I've got a lifetime's collection." So I've been collecting for 3 years. I work in medical research as a research nurse, and I began collecting. I'm what they call a pandemic collector. That doesn't mean I'm collecting diseases. It just means I started in the pandemic.
Wow. And with the three locations, I think you said that you have your stuff stored in, you've made quite the collection in just the last few years.
Yeah, it's because I think Jack said he's been to the UK. I don't know if you have, but the houses tend to be quite small, and we have what's called terraced houses, and they look a little bit like books on a bookshelf. So they're just all the same, and they're just like that. And we don't have basements. We don't have, well, hardly any of us even have a cellar. So we don't have much room. So for me, I've got a small room for mostly my Lego and a few of my Black Series figures. But then for my larger models, because I have a lot of Titanic-sized Lego sets, those are in my brother's cellar. And then my parents have the majority of my Hot Toys collection in their spare room, which is where I am right now.
And for those of us who have never been to England before, are you kind of in the city part of the country, or are you in the country part of the country?
It's such a small country, it just feels like it's all city sometimes. But I'm actually in the centre of the city of Leicester, but by your standards, it'd probably be considered something like a large town.
Okay, maybe the San Fernando Valley or something like that.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and kind of jump into it. Starting off with our first question, what type of items do you have? Are they action figures, vehicles, helmets, lightsabers, comics?
Everything but comics.
Okay.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's not something as a kid, I didn't really have much of an interest in comics. I was more interested in the toys. So as an adult, I don't really have that affinity with the comics, so I just don't have any, probably for that reason.
And the scale of your collection, I see the 3 3/4 inch carded ones on the back wall there. Is that it, or is it go into the Black Series, the 12-inch series, the 18th, the 32s?
So in terms of the actual figures, I've got lots of the 1.5-inch Lego figures. I've got hundreds of those. My brother has been buying me some of the original vintage figures from the 80s. So that's a collection that's growing. I have some of the new vintage stuff. I have some Powder Force, some Star Wars Saga. I have a modest collection of Black Series figures, probably about 100. And then I have and those are obviously those are the 6-inch figures. And then I have the 12-inch Hot Toys figures. I'll say 12-inch. Some of them are a bit bigger than that, like RG-11. He's pretty tall. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my figure collection. I don't have really big sort of figures.
And is there a particular story or movie that you tend to collect most of your items from?
I actually like most of it. Even I'm not a fan of the sequels like a lot of people, but I do have a decent sized sequel collection. Mostly, I'd say it's more to do with The Mandalorian and the original saga, the original three movies.
Okay. In general numbers, what would you say your total 3 locations collection comes out to be as far as quantity?
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? I've never actually seen my collection in one place, so it's a bit of a tough one. Probably the high hundreds, not the low thousands, simply because a lot of my collectibles are quite large. So for example, one of my mock Lego ships, I've got the Rogue One shuttle from the movie Rogue One. And when the wings are deployed in flying mode, that's 1.5 meters of space just for one collectible.
And those of us who are not into the metric system, 1.5 meters is what, about 5 foot?
So I think it's 3.26 feet to a meter. So that's
so
about
about
5 feet. Yeah.
Wow, that's a pretty good size model.
Yeah, and that's just one of many similar size models.
Now, you've sent to me a number of images, and so I'll go through and kind of try to pair up that particular image so we can get an idea. But how is that item displayed?
That particular item has had to, well, it was displayed, but the problem is in a small space, it just collects a lot of dust. And I did actually walk into it and I had to rebuild quite a lot of it. So that's gone to my brother's cellar right now. But I sent an overview video of my Lego room, and also it's like a panning shot. And generally what I do with my large models is I display them in something like a diorama scene, and I'll certainly always have lights on them from some angle just to show off all the different details. The good thing about Lego is because of its utilitarian look, it really lends itself to that used universe look. So all the details, all the little greebling details, various levels of greebling, unlike, say, like a Hasbro model, where it's just an injection molded thing, and then it's been painted over or it's had transfers put on. The good thing about Lego is it has that real life kind of feel and look to it with various panels and sub panels and things like that. So that's what I love about it. But yeah, when I display them, it's nice to have some light because it really shows it off. And you want it to have an impact when someone walks into the room. You don't want it to just sit there like oh, you got a Lego set. You want them to go, wow.
Interesting. Twofold question for you, Lee. You called yourself a pandemic collector. What was it about the pandemic that made you decide to start collecting? And what little spark during the pandemic really made you say, okay, I'm going to collect Star Wars?
Yeah, so just before the pandemic, or for some years before the pandemic, I am what you might call a passive collector. I didn't buy stuff myself, but my brother, who's been collecting for maybe 2 decades, always used to buy me stuff. So I had a collection of autographs. So, for example, I've got Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford. I've got their certified original autographs. I've got David Prowse. I've got all sorts of things. He bought me helmets and whatnot. So anyway, I had this collection growing. And in the pandemic, because I work in the health sector, we were doing research on COVID vaccines. And so my job was actually to go in and administer vaccines. And when people were ill, they had to come in and be assessed. So I had to live in the hospital in a room, and it was really, really small. And what's more, because it was the pandemic, at that particular time, I don't know what it was like in America. Actually, my sister lives in the States. I don't think it was as bad. But here, you couldn't really go anywhere. The police had drones chasing people down in the wilderness and whatnot. It was just insane. So I was stuck in a room with a microwave oven and no TV, except for my computer. And after a few months, I saw an advert online for the 40th anniversary Attack Walker, which looked amazing. But I was thinking, I'm a fully grown bloke. I'm nearly 50. I can't possibly buy a Lego set. And there was a little bit of embarrassment. It said 14 plus on the box. And I was like, no, don't do it. But in the end, I gave in. And it came. And when I opened the box up, I was amazed because as a kid, it was just Lego blocks and maybe a few triangle shapes and things. Now I'm looking at bars and pins and all kinds of weird stuff. And it's like, wow. And the light in my room was really feeble. And so I make this model and it takes me 6 hours. And I displayed it and I thought, that looks great. And then after that, probably a week went by and it was like, I've got to get the Millennium Falcon. I've just got to get it. And then I started making the excuses collectors make. Oh, I'll just get that one. Oh, I won't get any more after that. Or I'll just have 2 a month. You know how it is.
That's funny. That's funny.
And before I knew it, I was surrounded by plastic.
So this was in this room where you assess these people. So aside from them...
No, that was my living room because my living quarters. You see, in the pandemic, I wasn't allowed to go home because of the nature of my work. I was living in the hospital, in a hospital room, basically, for a year, for a whole year. So I think the Lego actually stopped me from going insane, if I'm honest.
Interesting. And as a pandemic assessor, were you having to was it just the mask, or were you in the big bubble suit?
So what we were doing is we were testing the Janssen vaccine at that time, and this is before any of the vaccines had been released. So on the TV there was masquerades being done. It's quite nasty. And in the UK we had a shortage of personal protective equipment, masks and the like. So when word went out to the public that we were testing an experimental vaccine, people flooded in because they were scared and they wanted the vaccine. So we had hundreds and hundreds of people coming in, and it's a very small team of maybe 15 people. And what my job was to create something called a symptomatic pathway. So those who caught COVID after they'd had the vaccine had to come in and they had to be assessed, and I managed that. So I was going out there pretty much more than anybody else, going up to people with COVID, with all kinds of weird symptoms and rashes, with next to no PPE, and that was my job. So because I was working in that environment, I couldn't really be allowed out.
Right.
Prisoner.
I like COVID's prisoner. Yeah. So that's what we were doing.
Amazing. And let me just end this, Lee. Why Star Wars? Why did you decide to go with Lego Star Wars and not, Lego Harry Potter or something?
So as a kid, I really loved Lego Star Wars. We didn't have much as I was growing up. So we didn't have much in the way of, I think the biggest toy I had was the TIE Fighter. So we just didn't have much, but I love Star Wars. The other thing is, I would have been probably a toddler when the first movie came out. So I didn't really get to be part of that whole fanfare thing. So it wasn't really until the Jedi came out, but I actually managed to get an interest in it and started to get figures and so on. But I loved it. And then all too quickly, it was girls and all that kind of stuff. You know how it is. And those things got pushed aside. But there was always something there. And so my brother, who's just 1 year younger than me, it took him a lot, it took him a lot younger than me because he started collecting several decades ago. And I'd walk into his house and I'd see his collection and it'd be like, wow, he's got all these helmets and he's got all this stuff. It's incredible. And he'd let me wear the outfits and stuff. And he was working on making different face masks and things. And I kept thinking, that'd be really nice. But I'm more into photography. I want to take pictures all the time. I don't want to. Do I really want to get into that? And it's going to be more money. So it was the pandemic that pushed me into it.
Understand.
Had it not been for COVID, I wouldn't have any of this.
Yeah, quite a few influences. The brother, Star Wars itself, how it affected you when you saw it, Return of the Jedi, at least when you were a kid, kind of the small collection that you were building from your brother's gifts. Interesting. And then the pandemic just kind of put it all together and said, now you're the collector.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So in regards to motivation for collecting, as opposed to a lot of people who might just have done it for the investment or the look, you kind of more did it for entertainment and enjoyment.
That's exactly right. And that's for that reason I don't really view any of this as an investment. I got into it because it was a fun thing to do. It gave me something to look forward to. It allowed me to concentrate on anything but what was going on. And I've just got more and more into it. And the thing about Lego especially is it's seasonal collecting. So with Hasbro, with Hot Toys, Sideshow, whatever, they'll bring out collectibles sort of in an ad hoc kind of a way. So there might be a new show comes out and then a year later you might get the collectible. But with Lego, after Christmas, you get the winter sets. And then you'll get the spring sets and the May the 4th set, which will always be a UCS set. So, and that's Ultimate Collectors Series. So those are the 18 plus adult sets. They tend to be around 2,000 pieces. So this year we had the X-Wing. Last year we had the Land Speeder. The year before that, R2-D2. The year before that, A-Wing. So they bring out some really interesting ships as well, what you might not ordinarily get. And then you have your Summer Wave, and there's nearly always £140 or a $200 set. And then towards the fall, they'll release the large UCS set. So this year, it's the Venator attack cruiser, which I think is it's an expensive set, $600. but then it's something like 5,500 pieces. And it's going to be, and it's like 4 feet long.
You're going to have to get another flat.
Actually, it's funny you should say that, because early next year I'm moving out into a much bigger place.
Okay.
And for the first time, my whole collection will be in one room. So I'm really looking forward to that.
So I have a number of questions here that I've written based on the images that you sent, but I do want to address a question that I have, and maybe a number of other people do as well, which is in regards to the Legos. Now, my assumption is that it's a number of items that you push together, but does it arrive already assembled, or is it a box of separated colored pieces? And are there instructions that tell you how to put it together and what piece goes where?
Yeah, and it's interesting because different sets will go about it in different ways. So it does come entirely unassembled. So 6,500 pieces, 7,500 pieces, that's the number of pieces, and you have to put every piece together. What you do get is numbered bags. So if you've got a simple set of, say, 400 or 500 pieces, you might have 4 or 5 numbered bags. That's dead easy. You just open up number 1, finish making all the parts for number 1, then you go to bag number 2, and the instructions will say open up number 2, number 3 now, and so on. When it comes to large sets like the Millennium Falcon, which is over 7,500 pieces, bag number 1 is like 7 bags. So you've got to open up 7 bags, and then you've got to sift through it all and put the pieces in order, so that when you're going through the instructions, you're not going mad. You're not looking at a table with hundreds of pieces trying to find the exact one you're looking for. So yeah, then things get a little bit more difficult. The other thing is, what you find with the larger Lego sets is they come in multiple boxes. So it's boxes in a box. So the Attack Walker that I have, that came in 3 separate boxes inside a larger box. And box number 1 was to make the underside, the undercarriage, and the legs above the knee. And then box number 2, it was the legs below the knee and some of the body. And then box number 3, the main bulk of the body and the head portion. So it's segmented. The other thing what's really interesting is on some sets you'll get a massive thick ring binder, and it'll be like 2 inches thick, and it'll be A3 sized, and it's a real pain because it's heavy. And as you turn in the pages, the amount of times I've dropped them, it's ridiculous. But on other sets you'll get 4 or 5 different instruction manuals, which will be a lot thinner. It'll be the same size set in terms of number pieces or equivalent size, but the instructions come differently. So I don't know if they're having a bit of fun with us or.
Well, to me, as I'm listening to you, and you said the simple set starts off with 1 bag that's got 400 pieces in it, and I'm thinking to myself, the running joke, and we've already kind of laughed about it already, about the IKEA stuff, is instructions. I mean, trying to assemble an IKEA display shelf with instructions is kind of challenging in itself. But you've got 1 bag, which might be the undercarriage of something that's 400 pieces. Is it real obvious as to which piece goes on top of what? Or do you have to really stop and read 15 times to go, okay, I think that one goes here?
Well, the thing about Lego manuals is it is a step-by-step. So you're on 1 page, you might have 2 segments on 1 page. And you'll have segment number 1, segment number 2, and then segment number 1 might have 3 pieces, and you'll see a Lego brick, and it'll have the pieces on it, what you should put on it, if that makes sense. So it shows you how it should look when you're finished. It doesn't show you where to put stuff. That's a bit of a problem, especially when you can't tell in the manual if it's a brown or black piece of Lego. You can't tell if it's brown or black because the print's not good enough. And sometimes it will show you to put a piece behind the piece, but it doesn't show you where to put it behind the piece in front. So it's almost like they're having a bit of fun with you. Writing the instructions.
Yeah,
so,
I have yet to get into the Lego version of it. I did Legos as a little kid, but have never done it since. I would just see that as being a real challenge. And the interesting thing is, as a non-Lego person, when I acquire something, and we've joked about this in the past, that the fun is the hunt. looking for the item, doing the research, hitting the buy button, the thrill and all that that comes as a result of that. And then finally it arrives and you unwrap it and such and look at it and go, wow, that's really cool. Okay, let's put it on the shelf, and you gone to the next thing. In your case, though, it arrives and goes, wow, I got to put the wheel on there. I got to put the top on there. So there's more time and enjoyment and thrill all involved in the Lego stuff.
And it's really therapeutic when you start with it. It's it's a really nice common experience. So I'd say if you wanted to start with Lego, probably if you got the UCS Land Speeder, that's a nice easy set, and it's a really relaxing build. And it's a set you can make relatively quickly because there aren't too many Technic parts in there. But no, I give it a shot and see what you think, because it might just surprise you. Because usually you don't just build one piece and it just gets bigger and bigger. You'll build sub-assemblies and then you'll put them together towards the end. So it might be on a video, but I got the 1989 Batmobile, and it's not Star Wars, but it's a big UCS style Lego piece. And that came in several boxes. But when you put it together, it's not really until the end, but it starts to look like the back car, and you're like, wow, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you think, wow, that is absolutely tremendous. And the other interesting thing a lot of people don't consider is the time it takes to actually design these sets. So last year I got the full large set, the UCS Razor Crest, and that took 2 years for them to design and to develop, because it's the engineering involved. They've got to make it so it doesn't fall apart. They've got to make it so that it can be assembled by somebody with normal intelligence. And when you start looking at the size of the pieces and the weight involved and the amount of Technic beams and things required to hold everything in place, you can see it takes a team of people 2 years, with obviously a lead designer, to put a set together like that. So when you make a set like that, it's a bit of a privilege, and also it's something that you have displayed, which isn't something like it's just been injection molded, but you also had a hand in creating that as well, because you put the end product together. So yeah.
And I would also think time spent creating the assembly instructions. I mean, I was involved, of all things, an assembly instruction for a lobster tank many years ago. And you have to really stop and think, okay, you're writing this for people who don't really understand, for lack of a better description, children. You have to write it for, so that people understand it. Well, if you've got 2 years in development of a product, you've probably got almost as much time trying to write the assembly instructions. And then you said if someone was interested in their first Lego acquisition and assembly, what did you suggest?
If as an adult, it might be easy to buy an 18+ set as opposed to a play set, because that was my difficulty. But you can buy the UCS Land Speeder, so Luke's Land Speeder, original trilogy, and it looks great on display. And it's a really nice set to build, and it has something like 1,800 pieces, but it doesn't have, it's very minor Technic, and it's a good size. It's not huge, but it's a decent size.
And while we're on the Lego subject, one of the images you sent to us was the cantina scene.
Yeah.
The note here, build ? And lit. Tell me about those two things.
Yeah, so what you can do is you can actually buy light kits for Lego. Now, the light kit that I bought, I built the cantina already. I'd had that built several months, and I built the light kit, and it was about $100 for the light kit, and that'd be like American dollars. And it took me 6 hours to install the lights, because you have to take bricks away, you have to put the wire in, then you have to reconnect. But the problem is, you can't put 2 Lego bricks with a piece of wire in between and close them all the way down. There'll always be a gap, so it weakens the structure. So after 6 hours of painstakingly putting all these little plugs into little holes and all the rest of it, it didn't work. It just didn't work. So I had a right sweat on as well. It was August, so it didn't work. So then I disassembled the whole thing. I pulled all the wires out, and then suddenly it worked. And I had a string of wires dangling all lit up, but now no longer in the set, and the set is half disassembled. And I was so angry. So, so then I did the whole thing again. Basically, I put a brick down too hard on one of the connecting wires, and it stopped the electricity from getting through. That's what had happened.
And so one of the other things that I noticed in the images that you had sent to us was a number of autograph pictures as well as autograph posters.
Yeah, so I've, like I was saying earlier, my brother actually has given me most of the autograph stuff. So I was really lucky to get Kai Fisher and Harrison Ford, and that's in a like a double autograph. So that's just brilliant for me. And then I've got David Prowse, Darth Vader. I've got Kenny Baker. Is that his name? I think it is, R2-D2. Anthony Daniels. Maximilian Veers. I don't know the actor's name. The chap that actually was the commander in the Attack Walker in The Empire Strikes Back. I've got his. Admiral Piet. Again, I don't know his name, but I've got his autograph. Keira Knightley, she was in the original Phantom Menace movie. She was Queen Amidala's body double. So I have her as well.
I did not know that. I did not know that. Keira Knightley, huh?
Oh yeah, she's the body double for Queen Amidala for the first, say, third of the movie.
Wow, and she's a big time actress too.
This was kind of just before she became quite famous.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite autographs.
Yes.
And I have a range of autographs from also Babylon 5, Doctor Who, you know, things like that. But yeah, I have quite a lot of autographs, and they're not copies, they're the original ones. The copies which I do have are the posters. So you might have noticed I think I've got a poster for every single movie from the prequels, the original trilogy, up to the sequels. And those aren't original autographs. That would cost an absolute fortune. Buy a house for that. Those are copies, but yeah, 50 quid for 9 A3 size posters. That's fine. I'm happy with that.
Wow. One of the other things that you had sent was a sculpture of General Grievous, which was quite impressive.
Yeah, now General Grievous is a real tough one for collectors to get a decent copy of. So they don't seem to make that many General Grievouses. In the Black series, they've got 2. So they've got a Clone Wars version, which was recently released, and then they have a prequel version. And they're both not very good. So the limbs aren't very good. You can't stand it. It keeps falling over. Then Sideshow brought out a quarter scale General Grievous. So that was a high-end statue. Had lots of plastic in it. And again, bad reviews. People would walk into a room and a vibration would cause something to fall off of it and that kind of a thing. And then I came across a review for Iron Studios 10th scale General Grievous. And it's polystone, metal. It's got fabric, so it's mixed media. So it's fabric, metal, polystone, all hand painted, hand finished. And it's a stunning piece. I mean, it's one of those pieces where the closer you look, the more you see. So you can get your phone out and you can zoom into macro mode and you'll still see incredible detail. It was pricey. I think it was about $400. But I'd rather spend the money on one nice piece than have 30 sort of cheaper pieces. So I'd rather do it that way, because I know when I'm looking at it, the quality's there, but also I know that the effort's gone in to putting it together, because I like to build things and I can appreciate something that's been put together by another artist, which is also why I love the Hot Toys figures, because they've been put together by artists, painters and tailors and all the rest of it. So yeah.
Well, Hot Toys and Sideshow make some really, really nice stuff. There was one other thing that I saw, and I made a note. It's a bracelet for Slave Leia.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about it.
I think you said in one of your videos, but you loved Princess Leia.
Yes.
Right. So basically, we're we're rivals in love then, because I really like Princess Leia as well. I've got loads of Princess Leia's stuff. Now that particular bracelet, I know, but in the States you can also shop at a place called Zavvi, It's basically, it's an online store, and they do a lot of stuff, a lot of Star Wars stuff, and some of it's really can be quite cheap at knock down prices. That bracelet, there's only 1,500 ever made, and it's a Disney licensed product. Disney don't like the word slave Leia, or the word slave Leia, for political reasons.
Right.
So to get something that is sponsored by Disney or has their license with slave Leia on it is a rarity.
Yeah.
But then I bought it brand new from Zavvi for £30. It's metal. It's the same as the original prop, but there's two. There's an armband and a bracelet, and I got it for £30. Wow. And there's only 1,500 of them worldwide, and I got I think I got number 364, something like that.
And
you get
30
a certificate.
pounds, 30 pounds would equate to what in US dollars?
45.
Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. And what's the name of this place?
It's called Zavvi.
Z-A-V-V-I.
Huh. Oh, Z. Is it Z? You say Z in America, isn't it? Z? Z-A-V-V-I.
No, Z-A-P-P-Y, I think it is.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Z.
I'm getting confused.
Zappy. Zappy.
Yeah.
As in
Yeah.
Zappy.
Okay.
You can't get any more of those, by the way. They're all sold out.
Okay. I'll have to get yours then.
$1,000.
Went from 45 to 1,000, huh? Okay.
One of only 1,500.
Let's see another. There was a Captain Rex that I saw.
Yeah, so that's a Hot Toys figure. So I started buying Hot Toys figures in September last year. And the first figure I bought was a infantry stormtrooper. So it's the one from the Mandalorian with a yellow stripe down his helmet. Okay. And when I got it out the box, I was amazed because I'd never seen anything so detailed in my life. The amount of detail was actually staggering. It wasn't like a Black Series figure. It was actually like a real life thing. It's like someone had taken a real stormtrooper and shrunk them. and I spent hours staring at it thinking, wow, yes, it was expensive, but my goodness, it was such an amazing piece. And there were no paint spill. There were no issues with it whatsoever. And the fabric undersuit, it was just wow. So the Captain Rex is, I like the Clone Wars. I didn't get into the Clone Wars until probably around Christmas time this year. So I think I'm at series 3 now. But I love Captain Rex like a lot of people do. He's a great character. So I got him, and I got him used for, I think it was £200, which in this country, because we have to pay a lot for Hot Toys figures. On Sideshow in the States, I think you can get a brand new figure for like $250 or something. We'd have to pay that for a used one over here. So I was really happy to get that because it's starting to become a rare figure now, and it's starting to go up in price. Even on the secondary market, it's getting to be out of reach of a lot of people. But yeah, that's an amazing figure. It comes with a 332nd helmet. You've got the 501st helmet, obviously his one where he's kind of got 2 helmets and spliced them together. And then you've got a really nice Tamara Morrison head sculpt that comes with that. Pistols, rifles, all kinds of stuff. But the detail, you can pick up a pistol and you can put macro mode in on your phone. It can actually see details in the wood on the handle. And it's not actually a wooden handle on the pistol, but it looks like it. And you can actually see details in the wood. I mean, it's just insane. And the amazing thing is, I know that it can take 2 weeks to paint a Hot Toys figure. So it's not a mass-produced thing. So it might take 3 different artists 2 weeks to do one head sculpt, as opposed to something just being done in a mold and then obviously sent off. And they use real tailors, hand stitching and whatnot. So for the price you're actually paying for them, I think it's a bit of a steal. Yeah, to get a genuine piece of handmade.
Some of those items, the likeness was just remarkable.
It really is, and that's sculpted. That's not done with some photo real technology. That's actually sculpted by hand initially, and then it's put into the mold.
Wow, wow. Going back to Princess Leia, there was also a Princess Leia nightlight.
Nightlight. Nightlight. A nightlight.
Yeah, I have Princess Leia dash nightlight. Might have been something that plugged into the wall, or maybe a lamp of some sorts.
Is it the diorama you're thinking about? The Ahsoka diorama.
I made the notes 2 weeks ago when you sent me all the stuff, so I can't remember.
Yeah. I've got a lightsaber. I've got Princess Leia's lightsaber.
No, it says nightlight.
No, I've not got a light. I've definitely not. Well, I've got lights, but not a Princess Leia one.
Well, when we do the video, or when I do the editing, I'll put it in there and everybody can see what it is.
Yeah.
There are, speaking of all the various statues, I've got statues, many of the 12-inch ones, question mark.
Yeah. So again, I've got a mix really of Gentle Giant and Hot Toys. So so basically I mixed them up on the shelf when I've got them displayed. But I've got a whole range of figures. So how many? I've got Princess Leia in the detention cell. I don't know if you've seen that. That's a 6 scale, and that's a statue piece. And that's a really nice piece. Actually, when I saw that 2 years ago, it was going for £160. So that's about $210. And I didn't buy it because I thought that's way too expensive. And then a year later, I still wanted it, but the price has now gone up to £300, which is about $350. And that's on the Diamond Select website. So they're the ones that obviously they make it and they sell it. So I bought it because I knew, but if I didn't buy it, I wouldn't. So yeah, I've got a range of different figures. I've got some. Actually, my figures range from the prequels, the original movies, the sequels, and also Clone Wars, Mandalorian, and I think that might be it for the Hot Toys. But I want to get. I'm more interested now in making the dioramas to put them in than getting more Hot Toys figures, because I think it's important, if you've got something like that, to have a nice home to put it in. So that's where my focus is. So my focus has gone away from collecting now, and it's gone more into building the dioramas.
And speaking of dioramas, one of the other things that I noticed, you had sent me a video of a Mandalorian, and it was a scene or a diorama of some sorts, but in what it had in particular that caught my attention was a campfire.
Oh, that, yeah. So that's behind me. So basically, what that is, I built a 6 scale moisture vaporator just as a standalone piece to put anywhere on a shelf with my collection. And after I built the vaporator, I thought, actually, it would look nice if it was on Tatooine. So then I ended up getting some clay and a base, and I built a Tatooine base. I've got I don't know if you can probably, you might be able to see it. Let's have a look. You might be able to see. Can you see it?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. So basically, I've got a tent there that I made. This I made out of balsa wood, tin cans, and
Wow.
this is mostly clay.
Okay.
Campfire effects. So that's a USB light in there. And then I've actually made actual rope effects on the wood and so on. I've even got a crate dragon skull just there, and then that there, I got that off a free website for desktops, and I turned it into, that's the back scene, and I turned that into a canvas print, and then I've lit that from behind to give it that look of authenticity, so to speak.
Scene. And that's interesting because I was just watching the other night some light and magic stuff about George Lucas and all that, but what you have there with that scene behind the scene reminded me of when they were talking about what I think is called the volume, which is that LED lit backdrop that's inside a studio. And so they can take and put, and he even jokingly said 4 prop items and an actor in front of the camera, and then illuminate the entire background with that, and it all looks like they're in some huge set. And what you have there, depending upon the camera's perspective, would look like you're on a set. It's a giant diorama.
Yes, yeah, it's 800 millimeters, so that's 1, 2, it's about 4 feet long.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It's a fair size.
And then you also had some Ahsoka scenes.
Yeah, so that was my first attempt at making a diorama from scratch. So yeah, I just bought 4 pieces of A3 sized wood, or hardboard really, and I had some gaffer tape. And then I just started building it, and it just came straight out of my imagination. So that's basically it.
Yeah. Yep, that was it. And
yeah.
You made that.
Yeah, I made it out of mostly out of balsa wood, some hardboards. Lego is excellent. Spare Lego for greebling, so that's to make all the different wire effects and things like that. And the lighting effect, that's actually Lego as well.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so all the different colored buttons that you can see. You see it? Okay, yeah. All the different buttons and things are actually clear Lego pieces that I drilled holes in, I put them through, and then put a white LED behind them, and it gives that effect.
Wow.
Awesome. That is so cool.
And then the frame around the box has got some unique
oh yeah. Can you which way? Yeah, can you see that's actually Lego greebling? So again, it just makes for a great 3-dimensional effect.
Wow, very impressive, very impressive. So all of the things that I've just now questioned you on have nothing to do really with my next question, which kind of brings us back to the original questions for the interview, and that is, do you have anything that is quote unquote graded?
No. Basically, we were talking about it earlier, but I don't think it got recorded. There was that figure that I have, the tri-logo figure, the European one, from 1983. It's Anakin Skywalker at the end of the Jedi. I have that on card, never opened. But the problem is, the actual bubble is disintegrating. And these particular European tri-logo figures, they're well known to have this problem. So what I would get that graded, simply because it was one of the first things that my brother gave to me, and I'd like to keep that as pristine as possible. So I'd have the bubble removed, and I'd have the card back, and then the figure. But that's it. That's the only thing, because I don't think it's going to go up. I think basically I'm never going to get back what I spent on it. It's just for the fun of collecting.
And is there a UK version that company that does offer grading?
I know there is, because I know people that have them, but I wouldn't know what it's called.
They call that one UKG in the UK.
Ah,
yes.
Okay, yeah. I know people that have got that that have them, but I'm only interested in having one graded piece. I think, to be honest with you, anything outside of the original trilogy now, it's not worth. It's just not worth bothering with, because I'd have to be 80 years old before the value of this stuff kicks into gear.
Well, and it's not always just the value of it. It's the protection of, for lack of a better description. I have a little collection of the Munsters. Herman Munster, Lily Munster. They came as a multiple piece set, and one of them is Lily Munster and the little boy Eddie Munster on a card. And when I bought it, as I do with everything, I try to do a little Google research to get a comparison as to pricing. And with regards to that item, I could not find another one on the internet at all. And so in my mind, because of its, we'll use the words rarity, it may have some value, but I think the benefit of the grading would be the protection as a result of the acrylic case. Now, I don't even have to have it graded. I could have an acrylic case made. And as I was telling Jack just recently at a barbecue that we had together, my issue is where it is now is pinned up on the wall, along with the other figures. If I get a case made for it, it isn't going to go on the wall. And so now that item has to separately go some other place, or the whole collection has to go some other place. And as Jack will attest to it, I don't have other places left to put that kind of stuff. So I haven't done anything with it yet. but as with your item, it lends itself to protecting that item so that maybe someday down the road, either A, it increases in value, but at the very least, it's protected.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to protect it, because my brother bought it me, and I was like, oh, I don't, if that got damaged.
Right. And that alone is worth something.
Yeah, sentimental value. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Hi there, I'm Jim Stein. I'd like to share with you some of my Star Wars collectibles. One of my favorite stories in the Star Wars realm is Rogue One, but in the line of JAK's Pacific Big Figs, there's not a whole lot of those characters available. In this particular case, I've found K2SO, Jen Erso, as well as a TIE fighter from that series. Typically, the JAK's Pacific Big Figs line is 18 inches tall, but in particular, K2SO is probably a whole 20 inches tall, followed by the more typical 18-inch, in this case, Jen Erso, and then you've got a TIE fighter in his outfit. Thanks for taking a few moments to take a look at what I have in my Star Wars collection, and make it a point to come on back for future episodes. In the meantime, may the Force be with you.
Blast him!
What color is Yoda's lightsaber?
Green. Did you get the correct answer? Either way, we hope you enjoyed testing your knowledge of all things Star Wars and had fun along the way. This is Jack in the Box. We finally get our box back from CAS.
Me? Poetry?
We don't just spread fun through action figures, we get close and personal with the actors that played these characters.
I'm Nick Joseph, and I played Major Arhul Extrafon.
You were the one that banged his head in that doorway?
Yes, that's me, yes.
And then they dressed me as a Hoth rebel.
Be sure to subscribe and binge watch all of our episodes. Thanks for tuning in to Jack in the Box.
Yeah, many times we've in these interviews, and one of the things I enjoy the most is going down memory lane with a lot of these people.
Yeah, there's I forget the name of the channel now. Is it Knickknacks? There's a YouTube channel. There's this chap is a collector, and he has he says every collectible tells a story. And for me, that's absolutely true, because from the pandemic until now, that question, every single thing tells a story. And that's one of the reasons I will never sell any of my collection, because it's just pointless endeavor. You'll regret it, and then you'll probably want to get it back again at some later date, and so on. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Sentimental, yeah.
And so my next question is the importance of the items collected, and that can have many different reasons. And I think in your case, again, sentimental reasons, whether it was something you did with your brother, your uncle, your aunt, your father, your mother, or whatever. But beyond the sentimental reasons, is there any other reasons that you would lend importance to items that are collected?
I think from a historical perspective, we are curators of our own collections. So I came to the conclusion many years ago, but we don't actually own anything in this life because life is temporary. So anything we have, we're just the custodians of it. It's kind of like rentals in a sense. And I think that Star Wars is an important medium in popular culture, and it has been for nearly 50 years now. And whilst there's a flood of Star Wars stuff out there, and I mean, look at Star Wars Saga, for example, you can buy those brand new 25-year-old, never opened, pristine condition. So I don't think we're ever going to be in a position, whilst the human race still exists for the next 1,000 years plus, where we don't have Star Wars stuff to put in museums. But I think there are certain valuables, especially the rare stuff like Princess Leia's bracelet, which has limited edition, and it may be valuable in years to come. So I think it's important to look after it. I also think it tells something of your story in your life, because you can attest experiences to collectibles. So this happened to me when I bought that, or when I was making this was going on in the world, and you can talk to people about that, and that opens up the conversation. So for me, I think there are two main points. First off, yeah, we're curators and we're keeping it not just for ourselves, but to potentially pass it on. But also it takes us into a situation like we're in now, where we can communicate and we can talk, and we've got something in common. We've never met before, but we can have an in-depth conversation about something that we both share in. And I think that whole point really about Star Wars is it's about good over evil, and it's about people coming together. And without getting what's it, cheesy, I don't know if you use that term in America, but without sounding cheesy, it's kind of done that here tonight, hasn't it? And on all your other videos as well. So I think its value really is it's not so much of an intrinsic value, it's more of a perceptive value. But the value's there.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
And one of the things I've always enjoyed about these interviews is the uniting that brings the different people that we interview together and their stories down the memory lane. There's a word that escapes me at the moment that kind of describes all of the things that we collectively feel about things. And I think you've used a word here tonight, and I just wrote it down, that I really enjoy, and that is curator. Because as you pointed out, we are curators of these items to potentially share with others now and maybe share with others later. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's interesting because when you buy something from somebody else, I've got a 1981 twin pod cloud car. I bought it a few months back, and I was just holding it in my hand, looking at it, thinking, well, it's not new. If it was in the box and it were new, it'd have more value. But to me, it has more value out the box, because that item has been in some kid's imagination. It's gone to planets I can't even dream about in some child's imagination. So I think it's something you can't really describe, but as a child, you're linking your experiences from the past, how you felt then, to how you are now. And it's refreshing to do that, because as an adult, life isn't that easy. We've got too many, like the pandemic, isn't it? You know, there are a lot of stresses that get in the way. So it's nice sometimes to look at something and think, yeah, a child played with that years ago, and he had adventures with this, or she had adventures with this, and I'm holding something of that person's childhood in my hands, and it has value in that respect. That person will never see it again, but it happened, and I've got it, and I'm going to pass it on to somebody else after I've gone, hopefully.
There's kind of a responsibility to do so.
Yeah.
You know, Lee, you talk about having loose items versus having boxed items, but over your right shoulder there, I do see some 3 3/4 inch figures that still are mock, you know, on their cards there. Why do you keep some still mock or in the box versus others that you open and display?
Yeah, so when I first got into collecting Star Wars 3 years ago, I think I'd been collecting for about 4 months until I bought my first Black Series and vintage figures. And I was under the misconception, but if you kept them in the box, they'd be worth some money, because I was just naive. And since then, I've kept them in the box. It's just, so I think, well, I've taken several of them out of the box, and I noticed they age very quickly for some weird reason. They seem to, the arms and legs seem to go loose even when you don't touch them. I don't understand why that is. But I think keeping it in the box is easy, because you have got that layer of plastic, which will help somewhat with UV rays. Not a great deal, but it will trap some of it out. But it's easy to display them. They don't keep falling over. I don't lose the weapons. The limbs aren't getting all weak. And I think it gives me that sense I had as a child when I walked into the toy shop. I saw walls of Star Wars figures, and I could only have one. And it's like, I want all of them. Well, you can't. You can only have one. And now I can walk into a room and it's like, well, actually, I'm in the toy shop. So yeah, so that's, and the stuff what I have open would be the hot toys, because I think it would be a crime not to have those out the box, because they come in boxes which are cardboard, so they have no glass, any plastic see-through packaging, so you can't see what's underneath. So I like, some people collect hot toys and they leave them in the box, which I always thought was a bit odd, because it's just like you got a box.
Jack has the fortitude, if that's the right word, to have bought stuff many years ago and never taken it out of the box, and even went so far as to admired it in the box for a short spell and then put it in a bigger box and stuffed it out in the garage for years down the road.
It's like a time capsule, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly what it is. In fact, Jack does another YouTube series called JAK in the Box, where he is now recording himself taking those items out of the box and sharing that experience with his viewers.
Yeah, he sent me a message. I need to go and have a look at that, actually. He did send me a link or a message to that. Yes, definitely.
Well, I'll be sure to, I have some information I need to email you already. So when I send that email, I'll include another link for you so you can watch a couple of more episodes.
Great. Thanks, Jack. Awesome.
You know, just to pat myself on the back really quickly, we did recently go over 500 subscribers, which was a big deal to me. So thank you very much for that.
Oh, perfect.
We're getting somewhere.
That's right. I get all my mates to do it as well.
Oh, yes.
So you mentioned you yourself have probably been collecting for the last 1, maybe 2 years, and your brother's been collecting for the last, what, 2 decades, you say? So between the two of you, with what I've seen that you shared with me of the 3 different locations, is his stuff part of what I've seen that you shared with me, or is his collection totally separate?
No, his collection is totally separate. And it's great going into his, as soon as you walk through the front door, it's incredible. He's got so much of the original vintage stuff, which he keeps buying me as well. So he's giving me a vintage Millennium Falcon this year, Troop Transport, at Scout Walker, and other things I can't even remember, to be honest.
2 of those are pretty large items too.
Yeah. So he keeps giving me this stuff. I'm having to find places to store it, because I can't display it right now. Next year I'll be able to. But yeah, my brother's got. But I buy him stuff as well. But he's got let's say a deep collection. So he's got stuff. He's got some. His name is Dean Simons.
Okay.
Yeah.
We might have to get in touch with Dean and see if he would eventually like to do an interview. That would be pretty cool to see Lee's collection and Dean's collection.
Oh, and then you can see some of his mates' collections as well, because he's got massive. I think
we just found our next 6 months of bookings.
Yeah, I welcome all the UK collectors. So the display space, as we've just mentioned, your collection kind of combines 3 different locations, but within those 3 different locations is a lot of the stuff, as we can kind of see in the back, on metal shelves, wooden shelves. Are they pinned to the wall? Are they hanging from the ceiling? How is your stuff kind of displayed, and the size of the displays?
Yeah, so in my flat, in my Star Wars room, I have a lot of bookshelves, corner units, tables, and I tend to like to have, I don't like to crowd my stuff in. So I like for my collectibles to be able to breathe. So what I tend to do is I'll put maybe a Lego model of, say, Yoda, with then the Dagobah scene behind him, and then I'll have the Black Series figures, Luke, Yoda, and R2-D2 in the swamp scene, for example, and that'll be a display in itself. And then each shelf will have something similar. So that's how I tend to do it. And then I like to light them. I use puck lights and industrial strength lights you might use outside the house along the floor. Lots of LED lights, lanterns. I have some lights that you would use to check your car engine at night on a pivot. I use those to light my Star Destroyer from the front. So I have a lot of lighting, and I like to, as you've seen, I like to make dioramas. So I'll take a diorama and I'll use a whole table. So my Millennium Falcon model is on a blue table, and then I've got a lip at the front of the table where I can put my placemats and I can then have a drink. Yeah, so I'm using it as a table. So it's a display stroke table with a Millennium Falcon behind it.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's generally what I do. I do shift. So you might have seen in some of my photographs, I've shifted things around. So one day there might be an attack walker under the table. The next day it might be a Venator attack cruiser. Because that's what I've had to do, because I've not had massive amount of space. And I don't like, with my Lego especially, I like to have that out. But now what I've done, I've taken the majority of my big sets, apart from what's in that room, down to my brother's house, where he's got them in the loft. So my Rogue One is down there now. My Venator's down there, and a few sets which you didn't see, which which I've made in the last few months here, which I couldn't photograph because I had to I was taking them down to his house. So yeah, I like to have a collection, so but it's bright, it's airy. People walk in, they don't see a load of stuff just thrown in front of them, because if somebody walks into a room and they're just overwhelmed by it, and then they walk back out the room and you say, what did you see? They'll say, I saw a lot of stuff. Whereas if they walk into a room and they can see the items displayed nicely and they're lit up, and then they walk out the room, they'll say, wow, that was a fantastic mod. Did you see that attack? That was incredible. You know what I mean? So yeah, I like it, and lots of people have seen my collection. So so it's nice. People get their phone out, they walk around, take pictures.
You kind of touched on a number of the questions that I was going to ask through there, whether it be the lighting or what the display mechanisms are constructed of. Is there an arrangement of the items, or is it just age or episode or character or scene, or is it just you kind of make your own dioramas from a collective version of whatever items you have that you think look good together?
So I tend to I call it mixed media. So I'll combine Lego, Hot Toys, Black Series, vintage, and I'll combine them onto a shelf, and it will usually have some theme attached. So for example, I'll have the Attack Walker on top of a bookshelf, and then underneath it I'll have the small Attack that I first made all those, well, 3 years ago, all those years ago. And then I might have all the Hoth troopers and things, but displayed on different shelves or in different alcoves within a unit, because I think it's very boring if you walk into a display space and you see 40 or 50 Black Series figures in a line. There's nothing to break it up. There's nothing to cause any of it to stand out. And that's just, and especially with Lego, the problem with Lego is it soon looks messy. And if you pile too much in together, it just looks like a mess, and no one can discern anything. They'll just see a pile of Lego. So yeah, I think it's important to allow your collection to breathe. It's important so that when people walk in the room, they can see the individual items. And by having mixed media, people's attention isn't stifled straight away. They can walk in and they can go, oh, well, that's a 2-foot-high Lego model of Yoda. And right behind him, there's a Lego Dagobah scene. And then, oh, I can see there's a 6-inch model of Luke on Dagobah, and he's got Yoda on his back. Yeah, and then there'll be a Hot Toys car next to that, and it'll be Luke and Yoda. So you've kind of put things together, but you've done it tried to do it in an interesting way, so people can look at the various genres of your collection and they can appreciate them in isolation. So yeah, that's how I tend to do it.
Interesting. And our next question would be, is your display area expandable? In other words, do you have room to grow? And from what you've already indicated, you've already got the next step planned, which is literally to move to a new place.
Yeah, and what I'm gonna do, because I'm making the dioramas I'm making now, it's for then. So I have an idea in my head where things are gonna go. I've got to make the Princess Leia in detention block diorama, because I have the Hot Toys Darth Vader with the probe, the torture probe. I don't forget what it's called now. And I've also, like I said, I've got the Princess Leia 6 scale on the actual detention block bench. So I'm going to make a diorama out of that. I'm going to do a Dagobah diorama, and I'm going to do a diorama with IG-11 and the stormtrooper, the speeder bike troopers, when he basically kicked their butts. So I want to have those made before I move in, so that when I move in, I can put my dioramas together. My dream is to have an entire wall stacked with wooden boxes of dioramas, just lit the whole wall. That's my end game in my mind. So I reckon 50 2.5-foot square boxes.
Wow.
I should probably be able to get them all stacked up. And you can use portable power as well. You don't have to use it straight from the mains. So it's power, and it shouldn't really be a problem. So yeah, that's my dream. And hopefully in the next couple of years, I will have gotten there.
Best of wishes, yes.
Lee, you talked about some of these online resources that you go to do some purchases, but talk to us and the viewers about some other areas that you go to purchase your different items. Is it mainly online, or are you going to toy stores? Are you going to retail stores? Are you going to like garage sales, estate sales, that type of thing? What do you do?
Do you have car boot sales in America?
Car boot, which would be the back of the trunk.
Yeah, so what will happen is now and again, a big field will be rented out, and there'll be 200-300 cars, and they'll all pull in, and they'll take stalls out of the boot, and then they'll sell the things they don't want en masse.
Almost
and
like
we call them
a swap meet.
Swap meet, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So I've gotten some stuff from those. I buy from a shop called Toys Wonderland in Hong Kong, because it's much cheaper than buying Hot Toys in this country. So you can get like half price, which could, so there's that. I use Amazon, I use eBay. The first time I went into an actual secondhand toy shop was several months ago, and I went in with my brother, and he knows all these people. They do deals in the car park and whatnot, collectibles. And I walked in, and it was amazing. It was like walking into an Aladdin's cave of collectibles going back right to the 70s, and it was stunning. And I bought the big Black Series TIE Fighter from there. I saw one hanging from the ceiling, and I said, "How much is that?" And he goes, "Well, don't worry about the one hanging in the ceiling. There's one down there on the floor. You can pick that one up." And those figures behind me, I bought them from there as well. And then he took me to another shop after that, and it's in a place called where is it called? Matlock. So it's a little town called Matlock. It's a holiday town, and it's really picturesque. And then you've got these lovely old-fashioned toy shops, and you walk in, and suddenly, whack, it's Star Wars, and it's pretty much just Star Wars. So yeah, so so I'd like to do quite a bit more of that. But it's mainly those areas where I, the car boot sales, Amazon, Zavvi, which is brilliant. The good thing about Zavvi is you can come across something and it will be $200-300 off what it would normally cost, and you think, wow. So there's the Millennium Falcon model, which is £735 on Zavvi. That was going for 500 not that long ago, new. So
great resource.
Shop around.
Yeah.
So that's generally what I do for that. And the other thing is, I get given a lot of stuff.
Given from your brother.
And not just my brother, from family members. Everyone seems to want to buy me Star Wars.
Okay, so that brings us to our next question, and that is, who is the collector?
I'd say my brother's probably the collector, because he knows stuff I can't even begin to go. His knowledge is just ridiculous. who's been doing it for years and years. I'd say I'm I'm kind of like the upstart, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm a collector, but my knowledge isn't as broad as what his will be. So I'm basically more to do with Lego, Hot Toys, Black Series, and the odd thing like the Princess Leia bangles and things like that. But my brother, he knows so much more, and he has so many more collectibles.
You're more of an artistic collector, and the brother might be more of a historical collector.
Yeah, that's probably true. He says, but I can't paint dioramas as good as him. so he wants me to make them and then let him paint them. So that's probably do in the future.
But it also sounds like your parents might be collectors that are buying stuff for you.
Yeah, they buy stuff. My mum said to me today, "Oh, what would you like to have? Would you like me to get you some figures like we're getting for your brother?" Because we bought my brother the double Hot Toys pack with Boba Fett and when Boba Fett's basically in the Sand People costume, it's like a double pack. So we got him that, and I was thinking, oh, I don't know, maybe I could have a break at Christmas just for one thing, to have something else just for a change. You know?
And of course, the next question is a kind of the honesty question, and that is, do you consider yourself obsessive, compulsive? Are you budgeted? Is it under control? Is it out of control?
So I think it, from the very beginning, it was under control. Last year, it probably started to get a bit out of control, and I had to have a good long chat with myself as to why am I buying all this stuff? Because I think when you get to the stage where the enjoyment is in the buying it, but then when it comes home and you open it, you're thinking about the next thing you want to buy, then I think that's less. then I do think to myself, is it actually about the collectibles, or is there something else going on? Is it but you need that endorphin shot, and why do you need that endorphin shot? And could you do it in a more cheaper way, perhaps? Because it's quite expensive collecting this stuff. So I had a long chat with myself, and that's more why I've gone into making a dioramas, because balsa wood and all the rest of it is a damn sight cheaper than buying a Hot Toys figure. I'm still collecting, but I've slowed right down, because I think you can get to the point when you're collecting, and I've only been doing it for 3 years, but I think that the transition between the light side and the dark side of collecting is a seamless one. And you think you're on the light side, but then suddenly you're thinking, oh, I spent $1,500 a month for the last 6 months. Why am I doing that? And
Yours truly got in trouble with a credit card.
yeah.
I figured.
Oh yeah, there you go. But yeah, I mean, I think people have just got to be a little bit careful, because sometimes they may have, I'm not saying that I have anything, but sometimes people may have an underlying sort of issue or something, and it's easy to bury it in that thrill of I want this, I want that, and not stopping to turn around and see what you've actually got. And it wasn't until I stopped going out buying as much as I was, but I actually started to appreciate what I've got, because it gave me the chance to kind of like, oh, actually, I'm going to have a look at my B1 Battle Droid that I bought 2 months ago, and I put on a shelf and not bothered looking at since. So yeah, I think sometimes, and maybe you can slow down by building something, because
well, assembling Legos or building dioramas takes up time that you're not sitting on that computer.
Yeah, and the other good thing is, if you're building something like a diorama, you might need something, and you could buy it off Amazon Prime, but it still might take a few days to come. And what that's doing is it's slowing you down, and it's like giving you time to think, and then you can improve your design, and you can make things even because you're thinking in that time, you're not wasting it. So I think, but for people who are collecting, just be careful, keep an eye on yourself, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Have my habits changed? Why have they changed? And just be sure you're not going into some kind of addictive sort of episode, because when people get an addiction, they lie to everybody, including themselves. So
Ooh, lie to everybody. That's I never thought about it. I accepted all the other things you said, but now when you say it's like, oh my God, the problem is real. Like I said, got myself into a little bit of a trouble. My solution was not to slow down on buying, but to increase on my income to compensate for what I was buying.
Yeah.
I've just recently made a big decision to make a big promotion in my business, which is aquarium sales and service, to try to gain more customers to bring in more money to accommodate the expenses of the items.
Yeah. No, that's a good tactic.
Yeah, but that doesn't solve the real problem. And if I'm
doesn't solve
lying
the
to
problem,
myself
no.
and everyone else, that I have to now really think about it. So there's one thing there that you did say that I'll have to ponder a lot about. Let me ask the next question then in regards to your collection. Aside from your brother and your parents, who sees your collection?
Lots of people. Whenever somebody comes into their house, I say, would you like to have a look in here? Are you interested in? People normally just walk through the door. They take a look to the left of them and they see it and they're like, oh wow, can I have a look? I've lost count of how many people have gone in. There have been times when it's felt like a museum.
Wow. And of course, then once they see the collection, what do they say?
To be honest with you, a lot of the time they just walk around and say nothing to begin with. They just walk in and it's like, because their brain can't calculate what's going on. So there's not a reaction. It's like a delayed action. And then they'll go, is this for real? I don't know how to talk in America, but yeah, is this for real? What's going on? Why have you got all this stuff? And I'm like, well, I've been collecting it. Why? Well, I got bored in a pandemic, so this is the result. And then people get the phone out and then they'll start doing video and they'll take pictures and one thing and another. And sometimes people go off and they tell their friends. And yeah, I've given quite a few tours around my collection. There was a chap who had a walk around my collection, and then he came back sometime later and gave me a hand-stitched TIE fighter his wife had made me. And then I was like, oh, I'll put that in my collection.
Wow.
And then actually a few weeks ago, and it's slightly off topic, I was at work and there was a gentleman who we were doing some research on, and he explained to me that his son, who has special needs, was having a really hard time at school. And then we started talking about Star Wars and Lego, and he said to me, I've got 2 Lego sets. I bought them years ago. They're in the loft. They might be worth something. So I said, let me see what you've got. So he showed me the pictures and I said, you know what? They are worth something. They're worth thousands. And he was like, no. I said, yeah. So we went on eBay and it was the first version of the UCS Millennium Falcon, £4,000 each. And he had 2. So basically he sold one, took his kid on holiday and he kept one back in reserve. So that really made his day. So yes, there can be a profit in it, I suppose. But yeah, that was good because then he got to take his kid who he had problems with on a nice holiday. And I think he said he might buy a car, put the rest towards a car as well. So yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We had a barbecue here, I think last weekend, and a number of people came over, and some of them were collectors and some of them were not. And they all got a chance to come down here and see the collection. And as you've already pointed out, some collections are just overwhelming and people can't comprehend everything. And as they walk out, it was just, wow, is all I could think of. Others, on the other hand, which are familiar with certain items or the Star Wars aspect of it, will focus in on something. And our friend here, Jack, came in and he spotted, what was the little Hoth, the medical droid?
21B, and also the FX droid as well.
You know, so of all the things in here, someone who is knowledgeable in that focused in on one small thing and then pointed out that it might be a true vintage item.
Right.
So a lot of it is the people who are viewing it, their knowledge base and how it applies to it, versus those who know nothing and just see it and it's like, oh my God, this is too much.
That's the interest factor. Yeah.
So do you have, I'm sorry, Jack,
No, it's okay. I was going to ask Lee, You know, when you're showing off your display, is there a favorite item that you have, or at least an item that's like a showcase item that you say, I definitely want to make sure that they see this item, and what is this?
Yes, I think the Millennium Falcon, because until you've seen one of those large UCS sets up close, it's hard to, pictures don't do the size of it justice. And you walk in and it's just like looking at a beached whale. It just looks huge. And people come in and I'll go, way, when I see it. It's like, especially because I made the Hoff scene underneath and I have lights underneath that mimic the landing pad. And I've like rocks and so on under there. So yeah, people come in and they see that and it's like, wow. And because it's made from Lego and it has that three-dimensional used universe look, somebody once said to me, is that out of a museum? And I was like, no, it's not out of a museum. It's Lego. What? It's Lego? Yeah, it's Lego. And then they have to take a real close look because they don't believe it's made out of Lego. So yeah, I'd say that's the thing, because people walk in and it's just this massive, even the Star Destroyer is really big that I have on the table, but that Millennium Falcon, it's the detail as well. You could sit there for half an hour and you'll keep seeing bits you haven't yet noticed. So yeah, that's the main thing. My favorite piece though is my Princess Leia Bespin outfit Hot Toys, because the face sculpt on it is just ridiculous. And that's the piece I like the most, but the Millennium Falcon has the most gravitas. Let's put it like that.
Is the Millennium Falcon, is it interactive at all? Can you take off like the back panel and see inside, or the cockpit or anything like that?
You can take off the cockpit and it has several body panels you can remove, and then you can see detail on the inside. So it has the corridor where Han kissed Leia. It has the hyperdrive. It's got the JAK table? I keep saying it wrong.
Yeah.
But that's in there with the seats, and the navigation computer's in there. And the escape pods, you can see where the escape pods are. So yeah, it's pretty good. You can take bits off, but only half of it can you take the panels off. The other half is just wasted space. But I suppose I could get inventive and put my own thing in there. Yeah.
And then
yeah,
to kind of follow up on your favorite item, how about a favorite Star Wars movie or now Star Wars series? Do you have a favorite era of Star Wars?
It's a tough one for me because I think my favorite era has to be the original trilogy, because I was a kid and it's got all that magical sort of feelings and imagination tied into it. But yeah, The Empire Strikes Back. I'm getting more into Ahsoka. Ahsoka's brilliant. I watched the last episode last night. It's annoying the amount of tropes online. It's almost like that there are people that want Disney to fail, and it's kind of like, no. We want more of this stuff. And if you're not happy with it, that's fine, because it's pretend. it's not real. And if you complain, we're not going to get more. Eventually, it's just going to go south, and the whole thing's going to come to an end. So yeah, I'm really getting into Ahsoka. I wasn't to begin with. The first 2 episodes were really slow, with a lot of pauses and a lot of pauses with thinking and slow walking, and it was ponderous. But the last 4 episodes were brilliant. So yeah, I'm getting into Ahsoka. Mandalorian, excellent. Kenobi, diabolical.
Diabolical in a good or bad way?
In a really bad way, because I like to be able to suspend disbelief. Now, have you ever heard of a playwright called Bertolt Brecht? Right. He was a communist in the early 20th century, and he hated Catholicism. So when he did a play, he didn't want people to emotionally engage with what was going on. So suddenly the actors would start banging drums and things just to snap people out of it. Watching Kenobi was like a Bertolt Brecht performance, because suddenly something would happen, and it's like, the scene where the Star Destroyer is chasing down what amounts to a bus in space towards the final episode, and they make a decision: shall we go after Kenobi because he left that shit, or shall we continue to chase the rebels in their sort of fetus stage? It's a mobile blimmin' aircraft carrier in space. It's got spaceships in it. It's got everything in it. Why can't you just send ships off in it? Why do you have to like choose who to go for and who not to go for? So that's the sort of thing. And Kenobi, it was full of things like that, which basically I just couldn't keep up with it. My mind kept saying there's a big gap here. It doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's terrible. And also, I think it damaged somewhat Star Wars canon, because there were bits in there which you have to try and do a lot of mental gymnastics now to square off to make sense out of something that now suddenly doesn't make sense.
Right. It's
And
like
it didn't give us
only
any
Princess Leia knew Obi-Wan before she met him there, you know. It's
Yeah, no way was that's one of the worst sins actually of,
Right.
of the entire show. Yeah.
Yeah, I think our perspective on a lot of these Disney shows has been similar. And, you know, this is the first conversation I've had since the finale of Ahsoka. And I think I'm in the same boat as you. The first 2-3 episodes, I didn't really enjoy, but I watched because it's Star Wars. But at the same time, and even now at the end, I do feel that it got better. Almost kind of went more like a Lord of the Rings, or even like a, you know,
more
like
Star Wars-ish.
Yeah, more lore.
Star Wars-ish.
But at the same time, it doesn't feel like the Star Wars I grew up on.
No, and it never will, because that atmosphere is gone. It's kind of like when you fall in love for the first time. The second time, it might feel as strong, but it's not the same. And I think as children, we didn't question things, so the magic stayed there. As adults, we question things, so that sense of magic is harder to attain, because we're looking at it from a more pragmatic kind of life experience sort of point of view. As children, we're innocent, and Star Wars fed into that innocence. We're never going to be able to recapture that. And I don't think, and that's why when you have a show like Kenobi and it starts messing with that, then that's when it gets you back up, because then you think, well, actually, you're now messing with something that was important to me when I was a child, and that's not right. Your writers need to understand something of the canon of the show. Whereas if you're looking at Ahsoka and you've got Grand Admiral Thrawn, then yeah, it's not the same guys in Heir to an Empire, but I don't think that was ever canon anyway. But the fact that they've actually gone out and they've brought that character into existence is at least something. So I think we should be pragmatic with the stuff that's coming, but we shouldn't be forgiving of silly mistakes, of laziness in the writing, because that's basically an insult to people who have been following it for a long period of time, as in all their lives.
I of all those recent series that you mentioned, the ones that I had, whenever you're writing a story, you have to, in the very beginning, set up the story and give background on some of the characters, and that in itself can be a little boring and a little slow or sluggish. Ahsoka is a character I'm not familiar with at all, and so that compounded the sluggishness of the first few episodes for me. The last few were more Star Wars-ish, battle scenes and lasers and this and that, and I began to enjoy it a little bit more. The only two issues I had with Obi-Wan was the guard gate that had the gate across it, and then nothing on either side. And the thought that went through my mind is, go around. And there was also some scenes where they were going in that wagon or troop transport, and it was kind of dusty, and it just reminded me of something that could have been filmed 2 miles from my house, and it just didn't seem real. The Mandalorian took me a little while, but I think I had the advantage of going back and watching a few prior seasons. Boba Fett, that one was real slow in the beginning, and there was some very slow stuff, and I think a lot of that to me was, again, building characters. Even my favorite, which is Andor, I rewatched a second time here recently, and I now, having seen it a second time, could see things that I didn't see the first time. So if I go back and watch some of these other episodes, I might see things and go, oh, that answered that question. It's sometimes you have to see it a second time. And then your comment about everybody wanting to tear it down, unfortunately, that's just the way society is these days. And the fact that everybody is a keyboard pirate, or can make their own comments or have the right to make comments. It's like, you know, what your parents used to say when we were younger is, if you ain't got anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Whereas
Yeah,
today
yeah.
there's no control, no governor, no clutch, no brake. It's like it just falls right
Yeah.
on. And
I think what the main thing is, if somebody has a constructive critique, that's one thing. If they just want to say something negative, that's something else. So I mean, I would say, but if you look at something like the sequel movie, The Last Jedi, the beginning when you've got Poe making mum jokes. As an adult, I can't now suspend disbelief because thousands of people are about to die, and he's doing mum jokes, you know. Or when Finn in The Force Awakens is traumatized because his buddy dies, and he puts his bloody hand on his and then 20 minutes later he's in a TIE fighter shooting them all, saying, "I've got to get me one of these." Those are the bits children might not spot it. You see, that's the thing. When we were kids, we probably wouldn't have spotted things like this, but as we've gotten older, and so I think to some extent people do have to give it a fair swing of the axe. And it is a shame, but there's so many tropes out there. But like I said, that hopefully they'll keep on building on what they've got, and they'll do a better job further down the road. They'll evolve, and we'll get better media.
You know, just lead, because you brought it up, I'm going to piggyback on what you said, specifically about the Last Jedi, that I felt one of the worst things about that film, and really set the tone from the beginning, is that Poe is out there making those mom jokes, and the tone of it was suddenly like, we don't have anything to fear from this new empire, or this first order that they called it. And that's something that would have never happened in the original trilogy. You always made it, you know, suspenseful, and that's the evil doers, and those are the ones you need to fear. By making jokes about them, it separated the tone so much that I never was able to get into that movie. I think that's probably the biggest failure of Star Wars right there.
I agree with you, because I've only ever watched that movie once, and I've never watched it since, and it's a real shame. But unfortunately, there are people that write for Star Wars or direct for Star Wars who they're not invested in it themselves. So for them, it's just another franchise that they're working on. Yeah. And what they did to Luke as well, turning him into I mean, he went against some serious stresses in those first three movies. He transformed and he turned into something special, and then they destroyed that. And it's kind of like, and even Mark Hamill, he's not happy about it, is he? He's like, what the hell have they done to my character? So yeah, it's a real shame. I think that there were standout characters. I think whilst people have said Rey is something of a Mary Sue, she had that script, and I think that she did pull out a lot of emotion. And I think that Kylo Ren had the potential to be an amazing character, but they just squandered so many opportunities. And like what you said, they destroyed. It's like if you listen to music and the beginning of the music is rubbish, you're not going to listen to it for the middle and the end. It might be great after that, but you're not going to listen to the middle and the end. You're just going to switch it off to the next track.
Right.
Yeah.
Fizzles.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on.
Make those comments though, because again, having watching the Light and Magic stuff just recently, Filoni and who's the big guy, Favreau. They all talk about how they grew up with Star Wars and such. And so I think they have insight there, but it's a different generation with a little bit of different social thinking. And, you know, I think every one of these episodes, whether it be Ahsoka or Obi-Wan or what, they're each different episode is directed by a different person. So there's a variation in continuity as well. So that might be part of it, as opposed to a originally concealed, concepted vision that when Lucas made the first three, and did he really plan the rest of them as well as the prequels, or is that all stuff that kind of came up? Okay, well, we made a hit here, we need to come up with a new story to continue on.
I mean, I would say there was a plan. It might not have been a full 9 scripts, but he had a full 9 film, what they call it,
Envision?
A vision, but like a
concept.
I forget the word now, but I even heard that at one point there was 12 movies conceived in his head that it was a 12-part series, outline, I was going to say. But, you know, when Disney bought Lucasfilm, suddenly that treatment of 7, 8, and 9 was thrown out the window, and they said, hey, we're going to do our own thing. And yeah, it's unfortunate. Maybe at some point in the future, they can do an animated show or something and show the original Lucas vision of 7, 8, 9 in an animated form.
That would be fantastic, because Lucas was passionate. I mean, he burned himself out on Star Wars because he gave it that. And I know, but obviously the Star Wars was saved in the edit, wasn't it? Basically, I mean, what he worked, a lot of the material was gone. What they actually worked on and spent ages on because they had to. But that's because he had that vision, like what you said, and he knew what he wanted. And he was prepared to make those kind of sacrifices, as opposed to putting something in a movie because they think it will look good. There's a bit of a difference between, oh, I think that'll look good, and actually this needs to happen. This is part of my vision.
Right.
Yeah.
And to kind of wind things up, my final question for you, and you did provide some very unique advice earlier about getting things under control and not lying to yourself. What advice would you give to either current collectors or new collectors?
I'd say it's a difficult one, because collecting to some extent mirrors your personality and it mirrors your experiences. So when people say collect what you want, yeah, I've heard that a lot. But sometimes it's a good idea to maybe consider, but when you start collecting, once that you don't know you're going to start collecting. It's not like I woke up that day when I bought the Lego set and thought, today I'm going to start collecting Star Wars. It's something that the bug bit, and then it crept up on me. So I don't think we have so much choice in it once that bug bites. What I would say is, especially with reference to your intermissions in previous videos where you've talked about collector's disease, I think that's really useful and very helpful, because you don't see that on any other channel. And it's important because it allows people to think about things, because when you get into any hobby, you've got to think about it. And the thing about Star Wars collecting is it's not like photography where you'll buy a camera and a few lenses and you're done. With this, you just keep adding. And then space becomes an issue, and then it's kind of like, oh, shall I sell some stuff on and now I regret it, and so on. So I think, but there's that element to it. So I think people should actually watch your videos and look at those intermissions, because they're very good. And I think that I could really only echo what I said earlier, and that is try to be responsible and stop making excuses for doing things when perhaps you should just lay on your back, look at the ceiling for an hour or so and just think, why am I doing this? Where is this taking me? And then having some sort of, because it's easy to make promises with yourself and break them as well. So then it's important to talk to people about it and get other people's take on things. And that's really good, because then you start to feel like you're incorporating people around you and your family and all the rest of it into what you're doing, because it's good to share things. Even if they're not interested, they're interested in you and in what you're doing. So yeah, watch your intermissions and the shows, and be responsible. Don't get what you want just because you want it. Think about it. And yeah, that would be my advice.
Good advice. Good advice.
Very good advice.
Lee, I want to thank you very much for sharing your collection with us, sharing some of your time with us. I am very pleased to have you're the first United Kingdom interviewee we've had the chance to talk to, and to get a little bit of that perspective. So again, I thank you very, very much for your time and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll just put a quick shout out there to Dean. When you're ready, Dean, to do one of these interviews, let us know, and we'll make sure that we see your collection and hear your insights as well. Also, you know, we talked about General Veers earlier. Maximilian, you have that actor, his autograph. His name is Julian Glover, and I'm actually Facebook friends with Julian. So hello, Julian. Cheers to you. And I'll send this episode to Julian once we get it finished edited, so he can watch this as well.
Is he
awesome.
also the guy that's in Indiana Jones?
He is also the guy. He's in The Last Crusade. Exactly. He plays Donovan in The Last Crusade.
Yep. Okay.
Same actor. Right. And, you know, just for everyone out there on YouTube, I'll remind you to go ahead and like this episode. If you've made it this far in the episode, obviously there's something that you like about this. go ahead and subscribe. Leave a comment for either Jim, myself, or especially for Lee if you have any questions or comments for him about his collection. I'm sure he would love to hear about them and respond back to you. Basically, do all the little things that they ask you to do on YouTube to help us spread the algorithm and get this out there. Lee, again, thank you very much for your time and your knowledge that you shared with us today. I always like to end it with, may the force be with you.
And may the force be with you too.
Thank you very much.